Hello. So I'm not going to make this one too long. I'm going to get straight to the point. Once again, this country, by which I mean the United Kingdom, faces uncertainty over a potential referendum. On this occasion, it is the formal call by Nicola Sturgeon for a second Scottish independence referendum. And she coincided this with the final voting on Article 50. Now, one caveat before I talk about Scottish independence. I voted for Remain in the EU referendum, and I would say, and this is something that both unionists and nationalists need to understand. Um, I don't want this impression that all unionists are Leave voters. That isn't the case. And I think sometimes that can be the message that is sent out. Some unionist groups, to be frank, put out that message, and I, as a someone who voted Remain, don't associate myself with that. Although I do accept the result of the referendum, something that nationalists don't tend to do. Um, the fact is, we were in the EU for 40 years. We have been in the EU for 43 years. It's a long time, but that is relatively short compared to the 300 years of the British Union, 400 if you include the time of the Union of the Crowns. And this goes well beyond political union. Now, what Nicola Sturgeon hasn't done is convince people in Scotland how one union is justified and the other is terrible. So her and her party repeatedly push this divisive agenda, and whatever way you look at it, pushing another independence referendum is going to be divisive. The last one was. The last one was bitter. The last one, I wouldn't go so far as to say, wedged apart communities, but it definitely created an undercurrent of bad feelings in Scotland. Last time around, it was long, it was prolonged, arguments were heard on both sides, and the people of Scotland made a decisive decision. This was not a small thing. This was not a, very, very close gap. We're talking about a difference of 300,000 people in a nation of just over 5 million. So that is not a close referendum. That was very, very decisive. I could understand the SNP argument really if we were talking about a few thousandths voting difference. Say, for example, the final result had been only 2 or 3 thousand in difference, but 300,000. It was a decisive victory for Better Together. One of the union groups um, has coined an interesting term, Project Listen. And I agree with that because, in the last one, the Nationals tried to slander the Unionist campaign as being overly negative. I never saw that. Call me biased, but I didn't see the negativity they were talking about because it was overwhelmingly about union, about unity, which by definition isn't negative. But anyway, they the last time accused the unionist side of Project Fear, and that little plan failed because Better Together won. But they're now talking about there's one unionist group talking about Project Listen, and that's very significant because that's exactly what the SNP hasn't been doing. If you look at the SNP's behaviour since the referendum, it's been nothing short of pathetic. At every single opportunity, Nicola Sturgeon has been pushing for the second independence referendum. Now, I think there's politics at play here. I think she's playing to her base because core SNP voters tend to be nationalists and they want independence. So, they want separation from the United Kingdom. She's playing to her base. Now, her logic for calling this second referendum is that was the SNP manifesto promise in 2016. But it's a broken promise from the wider Scottish electorate to the wider Scottish electorate because clearly in 2014, both Nicola Sturgeon and Alex Salmond clearly said it was a once in a lifetime opportunity. Now, you cannot operate that we're going to send out this message to the people that this is the only opportunity they'll have, and then if things don't go our way, then we'll give them more hope. If anything, she's giving false hope to her own supporters because I think it is My instinct is that it is unlikely that the second campaign will be successful. But that isn't, you would think as a unionist I would be happy about that. I'm not happy. I'm very unhappy. I'm unhappy with their arrogance. And I'm unhappy at the further division this is going to cause. Because if this comes about, she has said sometime between 2018 and 2019 to coincide with the time that we would be pulling out of the EU as the United Kingdom. Now, that's going to be over a year of uncertainty. It's going to be a year of squabbling. It's going to be a year of, over a year, of the prospect of yet another referendum. And this will be the third referendum the people of Scotland have seen in, at that point, 4 years. Three referendums in 4 years would be a lot for anywhere in the world to take. I'm not sure if that was even precedented. When Quebec had its referendum in 1995, I'm not sure how long it was either when there was a previous referendum or a referendum since then. I don't think there has been a referendum since then, unless I'm mistaken. But the point is, people do not want this. Even SNP voters don't want it. Even nationalists don't particularly want it because they have this thing about, I think they know that they would lose, so they prefer to wait. But some of the statistics are as follows. This is a YouGov poll. August 2016, 43% of Scots said that there should be independence referendum before the UK leaves the EU. 57% said no. November 2016, again YouGov, 39% yes, 61% no. In other words, it's increasingly the fact that people just don't want this. And if you think, okay, YouGov, you don't like YouGov, BMG Research, March 2017, this month, 44% for yes, 56% for no. That isn't even about should Scotland stay in the UK, that is, do you want another referendum? So if you cannot even motivate people to want to take part in another referendum, the SNP claims simply fall flat. When they say things like it's the Scottish people's right to decide, it's this arrogant notion that the SNP is Scotland. And it's the arrogance of their supporters that they and they alone represent Scotland. That's what I detest about their divisive nature. And they have created such a situation that if unionist parties do campaign energetically in a second referendum, they would have to campaign separately because if they get together, if Labour, the Liberal Democrats, and the Conservative Party get together, the SNP plays this very nasty game where they say they're all one and the same, you know. Um, So if Labour and Conservative work together for the greater good, in my opinion, i.e. to preserve this country, then the SNP will just turn around and say, oh, look, it's the Tartan Tories. And they'll make out Labour people who are pro-union as being akin to pro-conservative. And yet the Conservative Party can be voted out of Westminster. The union cannot be reversed. If Scotland breaks away, there's no going back. And this is a huge gamble. Okay, let's say you are totally dead set against the UK, you hate Westminster, all the rest of it. Let's look at the EU argument, because that is one of the big things the SNP has been playing on. Now, EU chiefs have already made it clear Scotland could not simply re enter like that. It would have to go through the formal process, which could take years. So we're talking about years of uncertainty for Scotland. Scotland would neither be in the UK or the EU. Now that is just if I was a Scottish nationalist, that wouldn't be particularly appealing to me. If I was a Scottish nationalist, I would want to be out of the UK, but I'd want to be in the EU. But the EU is not a guarantee. So what Nicola Sturgeon and her party is doing is a massive gamble, not just for her career, but for Scotland, which is far more important, and for the UK. And I make no apology for saying this because it isn't just about Scotland. Actually, it is about the whole United Kingdom. And those Scottish nationalists who say that English, Welsh, and Northern Irish should stay out of it, you know what? There are many people in England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, England, Wales, and Northern Ireland, who absolutely feel the United Kingdom is their country, and they don't want to see their country broken up. You see, what nationalists have never understood, they have this thing that unionists just have this love of Westminster bureaucracy and this great love of the Tory government and all the rest of it. It's got nothing to do with that. It's got everything to do with having just as passionate views, just as deeply seated convictions about this United Kingdom. Is the United Kingdom perfect? No. But I just cannot get my head around the arrogance of the SNP and the Nationals. As for the West Lothian question, after the last referendum, David Cameron said that the people of England need to be listened to. Well, he was right, quite frankly. I'm Northern Irish, I've grown up in England, but I do believe that the West Lothian question is an important issue, because if there's going to be a case of nationals always playing the victim and saying, "Oh, we're not listened to," which in my view is a lot of rubbish, um, then what about English voters? What about the West Lothian question? According to some of the Scottish press, that created great controversy when the West Lothian question was brought up. But why the hell shouldn't? Why the hell should English MPs not be allowed to vote on English issues, but Scottish MPs can vote on English issues? It's nonsensical. And this is what this is going to do. It is going to create nationalism in all four home nations. Um, as for the future of Northern Ireland, I don't want to expand out this video too far. I think that, with Sinn Féin now the largest party, that's going to create great constitutional questions in Northern Ireland. So I feel we are living in a very, very uncertain time. There's simply no mandate that the SNP has. The majority of Scots don't want another referendum, and those polls that indicate, that have some kind of notion of what way would you vote. Again, there is absolutely no cast iron guarantee that people want independence at this point. Um, the SNP cannot talk about democracy when they have blatantly ignored the will of the Scottish people the last time. So according to the SNP and the Nationals, 55% of Scots are not real Scots. That to me is obnoxious in the extreme. And to me, it just demonstrates what a single issue party this is. Even former SNP people have been saying they're concerned about those being having this tunnel vision, independence at any cost. Independence, independence, independence is the only thing they represent. It's the only thing they care about. Now, I was in Glasgow the other day, had a good time, looked around the Kelvin Grove Museum and the Riverside Gallery, where the former Transport Museum is now moved. If you haven't been to Glasgow in recent years, that's now moved, but it's very well done. I highly recommend it. But when I was seeing this, this news at Glasgow Central Station, I just felt this overwhelming sense of depression and frustration. Depression and frustration that we are going through all this shit yet again. Well, actually, it's not absolutely guaranteed. The British government could say no. Unfortunately, the SNP has set up this situation whereby no matter what the British government does, they can play the victim. So if the British government does say no, which they would be well within their right to do, the SNP would say, "Oh, look at the bullying Brits keeping us down." But look at it the other way. With or without Brexit, they would be calling for independence. They've made it clear that they don't respect the results of the decision of the Scottish people. They have tunnel vision. They only care about independence. It's bullshit. And I am so, so, so saddened by what I'm seeing here. If this goes ahead, even if it doesn't go ahead, the division that these people are creating is just insufferable. And I really hope they lose a lot of seats in these council elections coming up. I really do. I'm not a big fan of Jeremy Corbyn or his Labour Party, but I hope Labour starts to regain its traction. What I would say to people, I'm not going to tell people how to vote, but what I would say is, if you care about this United Kingdom, bear in mind the SNP believes solely in independence. All the social democratic policies they may talk about are secondary to this party. They believe in independence as their final goal. And every time they get voted in, it increases the chances of a second referendum happening. So if you don't want to see a second referendum, if you want the United Kingdom to stay together, but you might find yourself agreeing with some SNP policies, all I would politely say, consider other parties, just consider it. You may hate the Tories, but consider Corbyn's Labour. Consider the Liberal Democrats. Consider any party that isn't going to break up this country, because that is the final goal of the SNP. It's dangerous, it's divisive, and it's just plain wrong. It's wrong because there is no democratic mandate. And if the Nationals think that we are going to be silent, if the Nationals think that Unionists are going to be treated the way that they have been treating us as these overbearing bullies, it's exact opposite. Is the Nationals that are continuing to hold this country to ransom. So we'll leave it there. There is no cause for a second independence referendum. It's nonsense. The majority of the press um, were very hostile about this. I'm not surprised. The majority of people don't want another independence referendum. I will say one final point. I saw one Nationals protester in Glasgow, not directly, but it was in a photo caption in the paper, saying, nay British slave. That is the mentality of these people. They actually think that they are slaves of the United Kingdom. Grow up, really. I mean, to me, this is a perverse way of thinking in a world where there are actual slaves. So that jackass needs to go to Mauritania, West Africa, to see what slavery really means. Scotland is a unique culture. It's a great nation. It has its own unique culture. But having a unique culture doesn't mean it has to break away. There are examples all over the world of diversity, cultural diversity within a country. The United Kingdom is a great country, and I make no apologies for saying that I love the United Kingdom and I do not want to see it broken up.